Citricong, which I am going to read, and I'm allowed to read. It was an on-the-record message. He sent me this. Now, I don't know if he sent this to other people too. At first, I thought he was just sending it to me, but then I saw some other articles. So, here it is, the message. I'm reading it. This is what he told me. Now, he sent this to me at 12:45 a.m. I was already fast asleep. Met with Francis yesterday, Saturday, for almost 3 hours. One has decided to withdraw from the process of bidding for Francis Ngannou's services. After careful reflection, we decided not to submit our final offer. Francis is a good guy and a good champion. I wish him continued success and happiness. At the end of the day, he added, I didn't feel that Francis and I were fully aligned on non-financial terms. It is nothing personal, just a lack of alignment. And then he reiterated, I like Francis, good guy, just didn't have alignment on non-financial terms. Is that the same statement he sent to other people? Is that pretty much verbatim?
Yeah.
So he copy-pasted that?
That's what I'm saying everywhere. Yeah.
Listen, that's how the statements go. You spread
I guess.
it.
But see, so it was an uninitiated statement, meaning I never asked him for an update. So I saw that. I woke up to that. I asked him if this was on the record. He said yes. And then, being someone who's been around the block, I'm like, why is he willingly offering this information? Why is he coming to me without me asking him? Usually you keep most of the stuff to the vest until someone reaches out and you either tell them or you don't. So I said, all right, well, there's his side of the story. Let me get Francis's side of the story, right? And so I reach out to Francis and I say, hey, this is what was said to me. Now, and at this point, I saw the other articles. I'm like, this is what is being reported. Is this accurate? Is this what kind of happened? Francis then says, let me give you a call. Now, it was like 5 a.m. over there in Vegas. I was like, all right, if you want, or we could wait, whatever. Gives me a call, and we had a nice chat. Francis's side of the story is a little bit different. Basically, what I could share at this time, because he was very transparent. Francis is very close to signing a new deal, and with another promotion. And according to Francis, he was very upfront about this. And so they left the meeting on good terms, but, both of them came to an understanding that because he had already, kind of verbally committed to someone, more than likely he's not going to win. His feeling, and I'll be honest, my feeling after getting both sides of the story is, Chatri, which he's, in his right to do, tried to get ahead of the story, tried to save face by putting it out there that we are withdrawing, as opposed to we couldn't close the deal and get this guy to come. Now, I thought it was really interesting when he was in studio and talking about who the big players are. Thought it was really interesting when I asked him about PFL. That one seemed to be the one that really got him fired up. And so maybe coming off of that, he wants everyone to know, like, hey, we're in control here. We're not offering this guy a deal. It's not that he's choosing someone else. And, after a long conversation with Francis, that seems to be his side. And that's the kind of side that I'm leaning towards. That's no knock on them. And I asked him, and he said this came up in the conversation as well. Why did you take the meeting if you already had this commitment? He said, we had the meeting on the books. I felt like it was the right thing to do to hear him out. But I was transparent and didn't play any games with him and let him know that I have this and that I'm leaning towards this, but I still want to meet with you out of respect, come to LA and hear you out. I think Chatri, wanted to do a deal with Francis, is my understanding, came to the realization that he can't do a deal with him because he had this verbal commitment. He's very close, could even be signed this week, he tells me. And this is the MMA side of his deal. There's an MMA component and a boxing component. And I think he did the old PR move where you get ahead of it and you tell your side of the story and you make it seem like you're walking away, as opposed to, maybe you couldn't come to terms because he had a deal or he wanted something else, et cetera, et cetera.
Yes, as a former PR pro, this is 101.
So, I see everyone writing this story now, and I see everyone shitting on Francis. And I also see, and part of this is because of, my good friend Ant Evans, who has created this narrative that I've I'm in the bunker with Francis on this one, when he's got his own people doing his own thing. This like rush to try to claim that Francis has fucked up, when in reality he left the UFC in January. he's allowed to take as long as he wants to figure out what he wants to do. And quite frankly, it's a bit of a complicated scenario. It's not just signing with an MMA promotion. It's signing with an MMA promotion who's also going to be okay with him boxing as well. It seems like people are almost celebrating every time they have, they come across like some sort of perceived L on his part, as the kids like to say, which is a little bit bizarre to me because it feels like we should almost be wanting fighters to have more options and to get what they're worth, et cetera, et cetera. In this case, it felt like everyone ran with the one side of the story. When, let's be honest, sometimes, there's a little bit of bending of truth. Not getting his side of the story just to paint him in a negative light, to me, is a bit of a weird one.
So I have a few thoughts on that.
Sure.
Number one, you're absolutely right. Like, anybody calling like the Francis Ngannou thing a failure at this point feels premature just because the outcome hasn't been played yet. No matter what's happening here, no matter the back and forths, we don't know what the end result of this departure from the UFC is for Francis Ngannou. He could sign tomorrow for the most money anybody's ever signed for in fighting history. We don't know what this is, so that to me feels premature. As far as the Chatri and Francis both having their side, I think Chatri took a proactive approach, tried to get it out there, as I said, PR 101, smartly. I think it was very interesting that he used the phrase non-financial matters, right? You want to make sure that people know, hey, we've got plenty of money. It wasn't that we didn't offer Francis Ngannou big money. It was non-financial matters. So
repeated that twice. I
think a smart PR move from his side to go out proactively. Francis has been not kind of talking about all his negotiations out in public. So I think naturally people are gonna go to the story that was presented to them. And the last thing I'll say is, I agree with you fully. Like, this is not a done deal. We don't know what the net result of what Francis Ngannou is happening with Francis Ngannou. But I will say, as people continue to come out and say, I have not or are not going to do a deal with Francis Ngannou, that starts to whittle down his options, right? Now he is in a different position than he was at the very start of this process, where everybody said, I'm interested in Francis Ngannou. I want to take a shot at Francis Ngannou. Now the options are getting more narrow. Now the options for who he's with. But to your point, he said he already is kind of on the verge of the deal with somebody. So that's insignificant. All these different organizations that ultimately are not going to end up dealing with Francis Ngannou, he already seemingly has something verbally agreed to. So,
and just a reminder to the people, like, if a promoter comes out and says, I'm not doing a deal, like, just because David Feldman and Chatri say, think about why they're doing that.
Well,
think about why they're doing that.
Well, every deal is the biggest deal because Francis hasn't got any offers. So not the offers that he wants. And so what is the biggest deal? I think the money was on the table. Things have been offered to Francis. He hasn't accepted them. He wants more. He wants this. He wants that. I want to see him fight again. But if I'm one and you're out there offering the biggest offer on the table, what are you doing? There's no one in the game. Boy, are you betting against yourself? You're like, what are you doing? Like, I mean, I hope he gets paid. But if I'm a CEO of a company, I'm not offering you high money because I know that there's not a market for you. Like no one's willing to pay you what you want. Now we can get into realistic numbers, I think, which is $1 million. Between 800 to 1.1, I think, is where companies are talking about for him. But he wants more. He wants 3, 4, 5. I think UFC offered him. They said like $8 million for the John Jones fight. I mean, I don't know. I don't know why. I don't know why he didn't take it. But he wanted some changes in the UFC. You're not going to make those. They're not going to make those changes, man. Not until you get some sort of political group in there to tell them to do it. But then that's not what people want either. So I don't know. I don't have the answers. I'm not going to sit up here and tell you guys I do, John. I really can't. I want to see Francis fight. I want to see him go to a place that respects him and wants to take care of him.
Yeah.
I just don't know that he's going to get the money that he wants or thinks that he deserves. That market's not there for him.
Chatri, 1 championship. Francis Ngannou. Contract, free agency. I feel as though I might have had I might have had the scoop on this. Chatri came on and spoke to me. He said, we want Francis. We've been in talks with Francis, and we're going to submit our best and final. And those are very important terms that you know in business. When somebody says best and final, that's it. Even if they regret it and think they'll offer more, they won't come back. It's important that you know those words. Those words are very relevant. The conversation is going to end here. Even if I regret, even if I think I can do more. Just on whatever integrity to the nature, to the reputation that was going to follow me, when I say best and final, it's going to be my best and final. And Chatri told us that that was the stage that he was at. I thought it was great. I thought it was very interesting. And Chatri seemed optimistic. And there must be something about speaking to Francis where he does make you feel that way. I mean, it must be. Dana White can read people better than anybody I've ever seen. That includes PhDs in psychology that I know. Dana White can read people. Dana White said, hey, we're going to get this worked out. But he really meant it. Scott Coker had meetings with Francis. And Scott Coker said, yeah, I think we're going to get the deal soon. I think we're going to have him fight in the Bellator brand with MMA, and we're going to get him set up over in the Showtime brand with boxing, and I think that we're going to have this done in the next couple of weeks. I mean, at some point along this process, that was said. Dan Hardy, who's involved, particularly with UK and possibly all of European decision-making for the PFL, Dan Hardy was very optimistic. Hey, we're going to get him. We're going to get him. As a matter of fact, it's coming. We're going to make this announcement. It's coming. Stand by. And Chatri gave a little bit of that as well. And so, I mean, there just must be something with Francis. He must be a really personable guy, and everybody had a real good sense. And it came out today. Chatri said, not that Francis turned down, not that he turned down the best and final. Chatri said, I've decided to not present my best and final. I am out. And if any of you are new or you've watched some movies or something and you think perhaps that's a negotiating tactic, no, it is not. When a leader comes out and makes that statement, knowing their reputation is going to follow him, he means it. And Chatri gave us a massive clue. And the clue was simply, I sat down. I had a meeting with Francis for 3 hours. I really liked him. We weren't apart on the money, like you said, financially, but we were conceptually as far as ideas. There's parts where I didn't feel, in Chatri's word, that we were aligned. It's nothing personal, but for that reason, not for the financial reason, for the alignment reason, I am not going to move forward with this negotiation. Now, Dave Feldman spoke up, and he was not as wordy and he was not as polite. Dave Feldman said he wants too much money. It's unrealistic, and his value is dropping by the day. Next question. Okay, all right. But there is some themes there. I mean, there is some stuff you would take away. It does appear to me that people like him. It appears to me, even when Francis has come to us in this process, right? He's been polite. He's been calm. He's been personable. It seems he's been honest. Now, that's his business, and he doesn't owe it to us. But when we do hear his version and then we hear somebody else's, they're the same version. I think people really like Francis. Eventually, you get to a point where the guy just has to ask himself, do I want to fight? And it's a very simple question. It's a very binary question. And the right guy will always show up. Make no mistake.